Chapter 3409, Chapter 483, Legendary Mana Body's Might. Chapter 3409, Chapter 483, Legendary Mana Body's Might. Chapter 483, Legendary Mana Body's Might. When Abyss Water unleashed his miniature world, both the players on the battlefield and the spectators outside were shocked by the scene before them. Incredible. This is simply incredible. So, this is how strong the 12 Sanctuary's peerless paragons are? The second form of world creation. Many Tier 6 magical class experts can't even reach this realm, yet he managed to do it as a Tier 4 assassin. Crap. If he can use world creation's second form at Tier 4, isn't he practically invincible in the finals? When everyone saw the illusory world that had appeared on the battlefield, emotions of envy, admiration, and worship filled their eyes. It was especially so for the magical class experts present. They couldn't help but wish they could burn the sight of Abyss Water's miniature world in the depths of their minds. For most expert players, just achieving world creation was already their lifelong limit. As for casting the second form, it was a technique exclusive to Saints. Even so, the supposed minimum requirement for Saints to achieve world creation's second form was to reach Tier 5. This was because the mana body of a Tier 4 player was incapable of providing enough mana to support world creation's second form. Yet, at this moment, Abyss Water had cast world creation's second form with the stats of a level 120, Tier 4 player. Seeing this, everyone present couldn't help but wonder exactly how powerful Abyss Water's mana body was. Was it an advanced epic mana body? Or could it be a legendary mana body? Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Xia Qingying, Invincible Swallow, and Xuanwu Kaisho quickly halted their offensive and took a defensive stance as soon as they saw Abyss Water's miniature world. "Are we not going to help, Boss Paths?" the young shield warrior belonging to Untold Paths group asked when he saw Untold Paths suddenly stopping. Now that all of us are suppressed to the Tier 4 standard, he's essentially invincible on this battlefield, Untold Paths said, his eyes flashing with a trace of frustration. Unless he dismisses his miniature world, it won't matter how many bodies we throw at him. All of us will die. Most of the players present had probably seen miniature world creation's second form, in action a few times thus far. This might even be the first time for some players. Hence, their understanding of it would naturally be limited. However, it was a different story for Untold Paths. As an expert on the Divine Glory list, Untold Paths had fought many opponents who were capable of casting miniature worlds, so he knew exactly how tricky it was to fight against an opponent like Abyss Water. Once a player's world creation reached the second form, they could turn the ambient mana around them into a part of their mana, and this came with many benefits. For starters, they could also extend their attack range by a significant margin. Besides that, they could increase their maximum mana capacity. They could also improve their destructive power and physique. Most importantly, world creation's second form would have a drastically stronger mana suppression effect toward enemies. Unless the opponent could similarly use world creation's second form, they shouldn't consider using any ambient mana around them once caught in a miniature world. When fighting someone capable of using world creation's second form, if one could not similarly cast a miniature world, their only option was to fight through super long-range attacks and turn the fight into a battle of attrition. After all, even world creation's first form already took a lot of mana to maintain. Needless to say, the cost of maintaining world creation's second form would only be even more frightening. The problem was that everyone on Darkstar was suppressed to the level 120, Tier 4 standard. Meanwhile, Tier 4 players had very limited ways to attack from a great distance. Not to mention, the battlefield only had limited space for players to maneuver around, and it was even shrinking as time passed. With Abyss Water's capabilities, he could easily reach every corner of the battlefield in the blink of an eye, so it would be impossible to keep their distance from him. As expected of Abyss Water, even a Divine Glory expert like Untold Paths dare not get close to him. Outside the battlefield, Wu Duanhan watched the clash between Abyss Water and Xia Qingying's group with great excitement. Now that he had latched onto Abyss Water's ship, the stronger Abyss Water was, the greater his position in the Eternal Chamber of Commerce would become in the future. Meanwhile, the ability to use world creation's second form at Tier 4 was undoubtedly an incredible feat even among Eternal's Grand Elders. Most likely, only a few could replicate it. On the battlefield, Xuanwu Kaisha took a deep breath and said in a low voice through the team chat, "I have a way to push him back once and only once. As soon as it happens, use the opportunity to get out of his miniature world. Your taboo skill may not be enough, so let me help you," Invincible Swallow quietly said. "I can trap him for a very brief period. Rather than knock him back, try to land a fatal blow. All right, you trap him, and I'll finish him." Xuanwu Kaisha nodded without hesitation. However, right after their brief conversation, Abyss Water's figure suddenly blurred for an instant. Not good. That was a doppelganger. Although Abyss Water's figure had returned to looking solid, Xuanwu Kaisha still noticed the brief change, deduced the cause for it, and promptly warned the others. However, Xuanwu Chisha's warning came a moment too late. Before Invincible Swallow could react, he heard Abyss Water's voice suddenly coming from behind him. "Did you all really think I'd be foolish enough to confront you directly and abandon an assassin's advantage?" Without warning, Abyss Water had appeared behind Invincible Swallow like a ghost with two blood-red daggers held in a reverse grip. Then, he brought the weapons down onto the suppressed Tier 6 Mage God's back. Even though Invincible Swallow's brain was already alerted to Abyss Water's attack, his body couldn't keep up with the assassin, who was empowered by his miniature world. Clang! A crisp metallic collision reverberated and echoed in the hearts of Invincible Swallow and Xia Qingying, who stood beside Invincible Swallow. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Abyss Water's two blood-red daggers did not sink into Invincible Swallow's back. Instead, they stopped 3 inches short of reaching the Mage God's back, their descent hindered by a blue longsword. "You can keep up with my speed." Abyss Water looked at the owner of the blue longsword, surprise and disbelief in his eyes. Aside from Abyss Water, Invincible Swallow and Xia Qingying also could not believe what they were seeing. Setting aside whether a Tier 4 swordsman could keep up with a Tier 4 assassin's speed, simply the fact that Shifeng could match Abyss Water's power was already mind-blowing. After all, the power Abyss Water could exert with the help of his miniature world was not something most Tier 4 players could withstand. Take Xuanwu Kaisha, for example. Had her class not belonged to the tank category, Abyss Water would have incapacitated or killed her when she previously blocked his attack. The combination of a tank class and a shield granted Xuanwu Kaisha incredible durability. If she blocked an attack with her shield, she could mitigate 80% of the attack's impact and reduce the damage she received to a great extent. Not to mention, Xuanwu Kaisha wasn't just an ordinary shield warrior. She was also the owner of the Divine Warrior class, a unique class. When it came to tanking damage, she was significantly stronger than ordinary shield warriors and guardian knights. Yet, even under such circumstances, Xuanwu Kaisha was still sent airborne and knocked several yards away. This was an indicator of the terrifying offensive power Abyss Water possessed. In response to Abyss Water's surprise, Shifeng calmly said, "You're not that fast, though?" Arrogance. Abyss Water snorted and promptly tried to use his exclusive absolute technique, Divine Dance. He developed the technique by combining an offensive absolute technique and an absolute body technique. It was his signature move, and its offensive capabilities were no different than that of a true gold combat technique. However, just as Abyss Water was about to swing his daggers, he suddenly felt a dense mana emanating from Shifeng. Then, what happened next shocked him. Mana. Why can't I manipulate mana? TL notes, the power term I've used in this chapter is a representation of strength, plus other bonuses. As world creation mana doesn't directly increase the numerical value of the strength stat, I felt that it would be inaccurate to say that so-and-so has great strength. Phi uppercase strength represents the strength stat in God's domain, while lowercase strength represents overall strength. Also, strength, power, force. The author uses for a lot of things, so I can never be sure what he is referring to unless he specifically mentions strength attribute. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3410, Chapter 484, Invincible. Chapter 3410, Chapter 484, Invincible. Chapter 484, Invincible. What's going on? Why can't I sense any mana? As soon as Shifeng spread his mana, All players within a 300-yard radius involuntarily shuddered. Some even felt fear. It was no exaggeration to say that mana was the most familiar existence to players in God's domain. Starting from Tier 0, players had to constantly perceive and manipulate mana until they mastered their own mana. Then, once they became more proficient at these two things, they would start learning how to handle the mana around them. Meanwhile, of the experts on the battlefield, every one of them had long since ingrained the ways of perceiving and using their own mana and ambient mana into their bones. Of course, it wasn't as if the players present had never experienced staying in an environment without mana. However, the battlefield they currently stood on clearly wasn't one such environment. On the contrary, mana was present in such abundance that it had already taken a solid state. Yet, they could not perceive it. It was as if the thing their eyes were seeing wasn't mana but something else entirely. No. Why can his mana domain cover such a large range? We are on Darkstar right now. Even an expert like Abyss Water can't extend his miniature world beyond 200 yards, yet this guy is covering 300 yard. That's not all. I can feel my own mana getting eroded as we speak, and I'm having trouble even manipulating it. The players present within the area covered by Shifeng's mana quickly noticed its peculiarities. Meanwhile, Abyss Water, who stood closest to the source of this mana, noticed these peculiarities even more clearly. What did he do? Abyss Water was greatly confused as he looked at Shifeng. Heavy. His body had become incredibly heavy. However, this heaviness was unlike standing in a high-gravity space. While standing in Shifeng's mana domain, Abyss Water felt as if countless hands had latched onto him and were pulling him down. So long as he tried to move, a powerful opposing force would act on his body. But what really puzzled him was his inability to manipulate any of the mana around him. As a result, he could no longer keep his miniature world extended, and he could only keep it covering the surface of his body. This situation was simply unbelievable. This was undoubtedly the first time he had experienced his miniature world getting suppressed to such an extent. Not even the Tier 6 gods he had encountered in the past could accomplish such a feat. However, Abyss Water wasn't the only person feeling surprised right now. Shifeng, the cause of Abyss Water's predicament, was similarly surprised, though he was surprised for an entirely different reason. World creation's second form truly is powerful. Shifeng was secretly amazed when he saw Abyss Water still being able to maintain his miniature world. Even with a legendary mana body and level 6 mana affinity, the best I can do is suppress his miniature world. None of my mana can invade his body and erode his mana. Before reaching level 6 mana affinity, Shifeng was still unaware of how powerful a legendary mana body's mana was. He simply thought of it as quantitative upgrade to a advanced epic mana body and that it would only be better at suppressing other players' mana. Of course, even if it was only a quantitative upgrade, it was already plenty impressive as it allowed him to match the mana of Tier 5 players even when he was only at Tier 4. However, after upgrading his mana affinity to level 6, he finally realized the true power of a legendary mana body. With his amazing mana pool, not only could he easily suppress his opponents, making it impossible for them to manipulate their mana, but he could also use mana to enhance his strength to a terrifying extent. This was also why, even with both their stats suppressed to the level 120, Tier 4 standard, Shifeng was able to kill Solitary Madness, one of the top 10 experts on the Luminous Glory list, in one move. However, Shifeng stayed surprised for only a moment. Immediately afterward, he swung the Winter of Eternal Night and sent a tsunami of fire at Abyss Water. Second Sword, Holy Devour. With the enhancement of Shifeng's powerful mana, the raging flames of Holy Devour were able to cause cracks in Darkstar's rigid space. If I'm going to die, I'm taking you with me. After glancing at the tsunami of flames, Abyss Water instantly transformed his 2 daggers into hundreds of blood-red threads. Then, he cast these threads toward Shifeng as if he was casting a fishing net, every one of these threads easily cutting apart the space in their path. Is the Scarlet Merchant Alliance insane? It took out one of its most prized possessions just to recruit a peerless paragon from the 12 sanctuaries? Standing nearby, Xia Qingying's face turned pale when she saw the sight of Abyss Water's daggers transforming into hundreds of scarlet threads. The scarlet threads. They were a set of legendary weapons, and they ranked among the top legendary weapons. At one time, the set of daggers even used to be among the 7 Luminaries Alliance's legendary weapon list, a record of the top 100 legendary weapons that existed in the Greater Gods domain. Throughout history, the Scarlet Threads were used by 2 of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's Divine Glory experts. With the dagger set in hand, those 2 experts could single-handedly slay Tier 6 gods. Meanwhile, a big factor contributing to the Scarlet Threads was the attached skill 1000 Bloodblades. Not only did this skill grant players the ability to transcend tiers, but it was also unstoppable. At this time, it wasn't just Xia Qingying who noticed Abyss Water was wielding the Scarlet Threads. Invincible Swallow and Xuanwu Kaisho also recognized the legendary dagger set as well as the infamous 1000 Bloodblades. "It looks like they'll perish together," Invincible Swallow silently lamented. An attack composed of hundreds of projectiles was something even veteran saints could not dodge completely. When the past 2 owners of Scarlet Threads wielded the daggers, even Tier 6 saints had fallen to this move. His death won't be in vain, Xuanwu Kaisho thought, a hint of admiration appearing in her eyes as she looked at Shifeng. Abyss Water was an expert capable of using world creation's second form at Tier 4. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was invincible among Tier 4 players of the same level. So, the fact that Abyss Water was forced into using a trump card like 1000 Bloodblades just showed how formidable of an opponent Shifeng was. When everyone thought Shifeng and Abyss Water would perish together, Shifeng suddenly took the initiative to meet the oncoming Scarlet Threads. Logically, it should be impossible for any Tier 4 player to evade hundreds of attacks at a time. Yet, Shifeng appeared to be the master of this space as his figure constantly flickered back and forth in mid-air, traveling at speeds even faster than players using instantaneous movement. This, in turn, made it impossible for the Scarlet Threads to catch him. First step, stepping space. In the blink of an eye, Shifeng had passed through the hundreds of threads and stood directly in front of Abyss Water. Moreover, before Abyss Water even realized it, the blue long sword in Shifeng's hand had already inserted itself into his forehead, causing his HP to plummet. A gold combat technique? Abyss Water stared at Shifeng in disbelief. He wanted to say something, but no words could come out of his mouth as HP had already reached 0. Then, his vision turned grey, and his body collapsed outside his control. Subsequently, the entire arena fell into an unprecedented silence as everyone, even those still fighting on the battlefield, froze in place. Nobody could utter a word as they stared at Abyss Water's corpse. Just a moment ago, everyone believed that Abyss Water, a monster capable of using world creation's second form at Tier 4, would be invincible on the battlefield. Yet, now, this invincible existence had fallen to a single strike from a Tier 4 swordsman. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3411, Chapter 485, Eternal Chamber of Commerce's Decision. Chapter 3411, Chapter 485, Eternal Chamber of Commerce's Decision. Chapter 485, Eternal Chamber of Commerce's Decision. Boss, what exactly did Black Flame just do? The young shield warrior standing next to Untold Paths couldn't help but ask as his eyes focused on Abyss Water's corpse. Shouldn't 1000 Bloodblades be an unstoppable attack? Also, how can Black Flame move so flexibly in the air? Shouldn't it be impossible for players to fly on Darkstar? While saying so, the young shield warrior turned to look at Shifeng, confusion filling his eyes as he watched the swordsman sheath his weapon. None of what just happened made sense to him. 1000 Bloodblades was a well-known skill in the Greater Gods domain. When the 2 previous owners of the Scarlet Threads wielded the dagger set, they had slain countless experts using the 1000 Bloodblade skill. Although Abyss Water was currently limited to the level 120, Tier 4 standard, any one of his several hundred Scarlet Threads could easily kill a Tier 4 player of the same level. Not to mention, with an expert like Abyss Water manipulating the Scarlet Threads, it should be utterly impossible for any Tier 4 player to evade the threads completely. Even more astonishing was Shifeng's ability to move in the air. After all, it should be impossible for players to fly in Darkstar as it was a forced setting. At most, players could jump and stay suspended in the air for a brief moment. Yet, Shifeng had stayed in the air throughout the entire time he was dodging the scarlet threads and closing the distance on abyss water. Most likely, he has mastered a gold combat technique. A gold body technique at that. Untold Paths said after a deep breath. But I've never seen such a gold body technique in the guild's archives before. He's a golden master? The young shield warrior's breathing became a little labored. Anyone who mastered a gold combat technique was known as a golden master and considered an apex existence in the greater god's domain. Even apex powers would try their best to recruit golden masters as they were a source of great power. Golden masters had also become a measure of strength for the various realms to gauge the strength of an apex power, and the more golden masters an apex power possessed, the stronger it would be considered. Meanwhile, among experts who had mastered gold combat techniques, those who had mastered gold body techniques were somewhat special. Firstly, gold body techniques existed in scarce numbers, and so were the people who had mastered them. Secondly, experts who had mastered gold body techniques were almost invincible against opponents of the same tier out in the fields. This was because they could run or fight whenever they wanted. No wonder the higher-ups want to get in touch with him. With such strength, he can conquer and occupy territories in the Eternal Realm with ease. When Untold Paths deduced that Shifeng might have mastered a gold body technique, a new realization quickly dawned on him. Although experts who had mastered gold body techniques were not as useful as those who had mastered offensive and defensive gold combat techniques in dungeon raids, they were extremely powerful in outdoor PvP situations and stronghold sieges. Now that the Eternal Realm's various powers still lacked access to their full capabilities, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that a golden master who had mastered a gold body technique was nigh invincible in the Eternal Realm. Of course, it would be under the precondition that said golden master was going up against opponents of the same level, tier, and equipment standard. While Untold Paths and the young shield warrior were quietly conversing among themselves, Xia Qingying, Invincible Swallow, and Xuanwu Kaisho quickly came to their senses. You really know how to hide your cards, Vice President Xia. How did you even manage to find such an expert? Invincible Swallow looked at Xia Qingying and couldn't help but say. A golden master who had mastered a gold body technique ranking only 963rd on the Luminous Glory list. This might as well be the joke of the century. At this time, even Xuanwu Kaisho couldn't help but admire Xia Qingying's capabilities. So long as a golden master reached tier 6 and obtained sufficiently good weapons and equipment, their debut into the Divine Glory list was basically guaranteed. Moreover, they would have a very high ranking. Meanwhile, not even pseudo-apex powers would dare think of inviting such an expert to work for them. Yet, not only did Xia Qingying dare to do so, but she had even succeeded. Don't spread this news, Xia Qingying awkwardly reminded Invincible Swallow and Xuanwu Kaisho. Xia Qingying didn't intend to correct Invincible Swallow's and Xuanwu Chisha's misunderstanding. This was because even she herself was surprised by this revelation. It should be known that Shifeng was formerly an expert who could barely stay in the miniature ancient world's god-ranked expert list. Never could she have imagined such a person could have such terrifying strength. Naturally, Invincible Swallow and Xuanwu Kaisho nodded to express their understanding. The current Green God Corporation was not united at heart. Many people were eyeing Xia Qingying's position. In such a situation, Shifeng would undoubtedly become one of Xia Qingying's trump cards in the future. Meanwhile, after Shifeng killed Abyss Water, none of the other groups on the battlefield dared to pick a fight with Xia Qingying's group of 4, choosing only to fight among themselves. Ultimately, Xia Qingying's group won first place without suspense, while Untold Paths group won second. This outcome was completely different from what everyone expected at the beginning of the test, so the atmosphere in the whole arena turned incredibly tense. Xia Qingying is in big trouble. The Eternal Chamber of Commerce has gone out of its way to prepare an extra advanced partnership slot to win over Abyss Water. Yet, Xia Qingying's group not only eliminated Abyss Water, but they even took an advanced membership slot for themselves. The Eternal Chamber of Commerce must be fuming over this matter right now. They're very bold, I'll give them that. Interests come above everything else for the various powers in God's domain, and to defy the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's interests takes a lot of courage. But isn't that swordsman named Black Flame suspected to have mastered a gold combat technique? I doubt even the Eternal Chamber of Commerce would want to offend someone like him, right? You would think so, but that's only the case for other powers. This is the Eternal Chamber of Commerce we are talking about. Not to mention Golden Masters, Eternal probably owns more than one divine artifact. Do you think it would be afraid of an expert who's only suspected of having mastered a gold combat technique? When the test results came out, the players on the spectator stand promptly engaged in a quiet discussion. While it was true that the Eternal Chamber of Commerce was an apex power that took a somewhat aloof stance in the greater God's domain, the organization was still subject to various interests. Even if the Eternal Chamber of Commerce didn't take any drastic measures immediately out of consideration for its reputation, the apex power probably wouldn't let Xia Qingying's group have a good time on Darkstar later. This was also something Xia Qingying was very concerned about. The 12 sanctuaries predated the current greater God's domain, and many myths and secrets are circulated within them. Some of these secrets were even tied to the mysterious primordial gods. Many upper-ranking hegemonic powers and cross-realm conglomerates desperately wished to gain a foothold in the 12 sanctuaries, but only a few could actually achieve this wish. Even for Tier 6 experts, entering the 12 sanctuaries was an extremely difficult task. Now that her group had disrupted the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's plans, if the organization took the offense to heart, the consequences would be unbearable for her group. However, after the test ended, the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's attitude surprised everyone. Contrary to everyone's expectations, the 3 elders of the Eternal Chamber of Commerce wore friendly smiles as they awarded Xia Qingying the authority of an advanced partner. They even took the initiative to remind Xia Qingying that she was now qualified to visit the Darkstar auction house's 200th floor and beyond, which was where players could get in touch with the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's inner circles. After the award ceremony, "Elders, are we just going to let them go like this?" Wu Duanhan asked with a puzzled face as he looked at the 3 elders who had just stepped down from the stage. Xia Qingying's group has eliminated Lord Abyss Water and even got a free advanced partnership. If we don't do anything about this, Eternal will become a laughing stock for the various powers. Laughing stock? Who dares to laugh at us? The leading elder coldly said as he looked at Wu Duanhan. And since when did you think you could represent the Eternal Chamber of Commerce? Also, why would you think the extra advanced partnership slot is for Abyss Water? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3412, Chapter 486, Taboo Slayer. Chapter 3412, Chapter 486, Taboo Slayer. Chapter 486, Taboo Slayer. It's not? Wu Duanhan was shocked. Anyone who worked at the Eternal Chamber of Commerce would know that the organization was all about profits. So long as there were sufficient benefits to be had, the Eternal Chamber of Commerce could even disregard its reputation. Abyss Water was not only a peerless paragon in the 12 Holy Realms but also a vice-guild leader of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, a pseudo-apex power. He was undoubtedly the most suitable candidate for the extra advanced partnership slot. Out of everyone participating in the test this time, Wu Duanhan found it hard to imagine anyone else who could bring the Eternal Chamber of Commerce more benefits than Abyss Water. Little Wu, in light of your past performances, I can make an exception and tell you that the extra advanced partnership slot was prepared for Xia Qingying, the leading elder said as he called up an intelligence report. I have a detailed report on why this is the case that I can show you, but once you see it, you can't continue staying on Darkstar anymore. Do you want to see it? Prepared for Xia Qingying? How is that possible? Wu Duanhan was dumbfounded when he heard the elder's words. He felt that the elder was playing a joke with him. But, then again, he knew that the elder in front of him would never play jokes, so he gritted his teeth and said, I want to see it. Even if I've failed, I want to know why. Suit yourself. Have a look, then, the leading elder said as he shared the report with Wu Duanhan. Remember not to share it with others. You'll know the consequences if you get discovered. I understand. Wu Duanhan nodded and promptly began scanning the report before him. Impossible. Wu Duanhan exclaimed after a while, his face turning extremely pale. This was because the report's focus was on none other than Black Flame, the person who had killed Abyss Water. The intelligence report recorded many astonishing pieces of information regarding Black Flame, and any of these could easily cause a stir among the various powers should they be leaked. The part where the Paimon conglomerate suspected there to be an expert rivaling primordial gods standing behind Black Flame was especially unbelievable. Yet, no matter how unbelievable it might seem, there was irrefutable evidence showing that Black Flame had the assistance of an expert capable of repelling an ancient god in the world passage. This information was incredibly stimulating news, even for the various apex powers. However, compared to the information the Eternal Chamber of Commerce uncovered, even the news of Black Flame potentially having a primordial god-level expert backing him was insignificant. The Taboo Slayer. Black Flame actually knew someone who could potentially be the Taboo Slayer. Now you understand why the higher-ups prepared an advanced partnership slot for Xia Qingying, right? The leading elder calmly asked as he looked at Wu Duanhan. However, despite how calmly the elder spoke, it was still possible to hear a hint of excitement in his words. Yes, I understand now. Abyss Water's defeat was just, Wu Duanhan said with a bitter smile. Even if it is only a suspicion, the Chamber of Commerce will undoubtedly side with Xia Qingying. The Taboo Slayer's existence was known to only a handful of powers throughout the entire Greater Gods domain. In fact, not even the Seven Luminaries Alliance knew about the Taboo Slayer. As an internal member nurtured by the Eternal Chamber of Commerce since childhood, Wu Duanhan was somewhat privy to the Taboo Slayer's information. There were 22 monsters that should never be provoked in the Greater Gods domain. They were existences even primordial gods and apex powers were helpless against. In the public's eyes, these 22 monsters were essentially taboo-like existences. However, only a handful of powers knew that there were, in reality, 23 such monsters, not 22. Only, the 23rd monster had previously inhabited one of the 12 sanctuaries, so very few people knew about its existence. Meanwhile, that 23rd monster was killed by a mysterious swordsman, and those who knew about this swordsman's feat came to call her the Taboo Slayer. It was a title with a simple meaning. It meant that the owner of this title could slay the Greater Gods domain's taboos. The several powers that learned of this news promptly blocked all information from spreading. As it happened, the Eternal Chamber of Commerce was one of these powers. As for why they did so, it was also simple. The news was too shocking, and it might lead to a great upheaval in the Greater Gods domain. After all, a player had slain a monster that even the primordial gods could do nothing about. Even apex powers wouldn't be able to sit still on this news, let alone upper-ranking hegemonic powers and pseudo-apex powers. However, later on, the Taboo Slayer suddenly disappeared from God's domain for some reason, and nobody knew where she had disappeared all these years. The only record left about the Taboo Slayer was that she was a stunning woman with long, light blue hair wielding a sword with a blade as thin as a cicada's wing. And when this woman went on the offensive, her strikes were as fast as lightning. Back when the Taboo Slayer had accomplished the unprecedented feat of slaying a taboo, one of the experts who had witnessed the spectacle from afar had tried to replicate her swordsmanship. In the end, he created a technique called Void Annihilation, and it was currently ranked 26th among the 99 absolute techniques. Void Annihilation had power comparable to that of gold combat techniques. With the help of this technique, the expert in question ended up winning the championship of the Seven Luminaries Alliance's A-League. Aside from that expert, one of the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's experts also tried to replicate the Taboo Slayer's swordsmanship and ended up developing a gold combat technique. And because of this achievement, said expert was instantly promoted into a Grand Elder. Even to this day, the location of the battle between the Taboo Slayer and the 23rd Taboo was kept under lockdown by the several powers. From time to time, these powers would also send some of their talented swordsmen to get a feel of the battlefield and hopefully gain some enlightenment. Meanwhile, in the battle at the World Passage, the Eternal Chamber of Commerce coincidentally discovered someone who looked strikingly similar to the Taboo Slayer. The glimmering sword, Laura Crader. Abyss Water was indeed a powerful and influential expert. Not only was he a peerless paragon of the 12 sanctuaries, but he was also a vice-guild leader of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. However, compared to the Taboo Slayer, he was nothing. So, the moment Xia Qingying chose Black Flame to become one of her helpers, the Eternal Chamber of Commerce had already chosen to give Xia Qingying an advanced partnership slot. As for Abyss Water, he was never within the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's consideration. Inside the Darkstar auction house, a luxurious and spacious elevator the size of a basketball court was currently making its way up the skyscraper. As the floor count on the elevator's display kept increasing, a mixture of anticipation and unease filled Xia Qingying. Although the Eternal Chamber of Commerce recruited many partners every year, if one wanted to truly reach the greater God's domain's apex, one must enter the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's inner circles. This, in turn, meant that one had to be qualified to enter the Darkstar auction house's 200th floor and above. Starting from the 200th floor, transactions between players would be strictly based on a barter system. More specifically, legendary weapons would become the standard currency for trading, and every transaction would involve at least one legendary weapon, and sometimes even fragmented divine artifacts, exchanging hands. On very rare occasions, a transaction could even determine the rise or death of an entire world. You don't have to be nervous, Qingying. You have already received Eternal's recognition now that you've become an advanced partner. Not only are you qualified to enter the floors above 200, but you can also bring others with you, a graceful middle-aged man with a graying beard said to Xia Qingying with a smile. But I honestly didn't expect you to become not just an ordinary partner but an advanced partner in such a short time. I should have Weilan learn from you more. Weilan is still young, Uncle Yang Hua. She became one of the top 100 experts on the Sacred Glory list not long ago, and now she has also become the Blaze Conglomerate's first successor. I fared much worse than she did when I was her age, Xia Qingying humbly said to the elegant middle-aged man. Also, I could only become an advanced partner thanks to my friends. It wasn't just my own efforts. Although the Blaze Conglomerate was not as powerful as the Galaxy Conglomerate, it was still a conglomerate on par with the Paimon Conglomerate. Meanwhile, even a bottom-ranked successor in the Blaze Conglomerate wielded much greater strength and authority than a vice president of the Green God Corporation. That girl never gives me any peace of mind, Yang Hua said, shaking his head. Rather than talk about that headache, let me tell you more about the 200th floor and above. Stepping onto the 200th floor is no different than stepping into a new world. The environment you will come across is completely different from what you can find below the 200th floor. The items you can come into contact with are also beyond your imagination. Particularly today, today's auction is probably the biggest one the Darkstar auction house has hosted in recent years. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3413, Chapter 487, 7 Cities, 4 Towers, 3 Absolutes. Chapter 3413, Chapter 487, 7 Cities, 4 Towers, 3 Absolutes. Chapter 487, 7 Cities, 4 Towers, 3 Absolutes. The biggest auction in recent years? Xia Qingying's interest was piqued when she heard Yang Hua's claim. Are you saying there's going to be a fragmented divine artifact up for auction? Even though she wasn't an official partner of the Eternal Chamber of Commerce before today, she had visited the Darkstar auction house numerous times in the past. However, due to her limited clearance, she could only participate in ordinary auctions held below the 200th floor. Meanwhile, according to Yang Hua, the auctions on the 200th floor and above involve transactions of legendary weapons or top-tier legendary equipment at the very minimum. This was not something she had ever seen taking place below the 200th floor. If today's auction could be regarded as the biggest auction in recent years, it meant that a fragmented divine artifact, which was known to occasionally appear in auctions held on the 200th floor and above, was likely to appear. When Xia Qingying mentioned the words fragmented divine artifact, Invincible Swallow and Xuanwu Kaisha also showed signs of excitement. Only the Darkstar of the Eternal Chamber of Commerce can offer players a worry-free trading experience without the fear of being tracked. If players could get their hands on a fragmented divine artifact, they could undergo a qualitative transformation that no legendary weapon or legendary equipment could provide. It was especially so if a Tier 6 player acquired one, as they would be able to unleash the fragmented divine artifact's full potential. Don't be too hasty. Yang Hua faintly smiled when he saw Xia Qingying's excited expression. Of course there won't be any fragmented divine artifacts for sale. Even the various apex powers treated these items like their babies, so there's no way they would just casually take one out to sell. If it's not a fragmented divine artifact, what is being auctioned? Xia Qingying grew even more curious. In response, Yang Hua chuckled and quietly asked, "Have you all heard of the Eternal Realm?" Xia Qingying nodded. She was very familiar with the Eternal Realm as she had done a lot of research on it. If not for her not knowing the Eternal Realm's exact location, she would have long traveled there already. My sources tell me that many things from the Eternal Realm will be available for auction this time. These things include the various towns' properties, Yang Hua patiently explained. Even the rumored secret treasure will be available for auction. Secret treasure? Xia Qingying, Invincible Swallow, and Xuanwu Chisha's eyes lit up when they heard this. Invincible Swallow even took the initiative to ask, "Uncle, is it the rumored treasure that can enhance mana protection?" "Yes." Yang Hua nodded, "That's the thing." "How many star coins will it cost?" Invincible Swallow asked excitedly, "Or what kind of weapon or equipment can be used to exchange for it?" Xia Qingying and Xuanwu Kaisha also pricked up their ears when they heard Invincible Swallow's question, clearly interested in how the secret treasure would be sold. "What are you thinking about, young man?" Yang Hua glanced at Invincible Swallow and said seriously, "That is a treasure that only drops in world mode dungeons. Do you think you can buy it with star coins? You can also forget about trading weapons and equipment for it. Unless, of course, you are planning to bid with a fragmented divine artifact. While there are many legendary weapons and equipment on the market, there is only a pitiful number of such secret treasures in existence for now. From what I heard, Fry from the Galaxy Conglomerate had to owe a huge debt of gratitude and pay an astronomical price just to protect the secret treasures in her possession. Can you imagine the value of these secret treasures?" Invincible Swallow fell silent when he heard this, as did Shifeng. "But don't be too disappointed, young man," Yang Hua said with a slight smile. "I heard that this auction will be settled exclusively in eternal coins. As long as you have enough eternal coins, you can buy the secret treasure." Invincible Swallow was rendered even more speechless when he heard Yang Hua's follow-up words. After all, only players currently present in the Eternal Realm could obtain eternal coins, while others could only buy from these players. It should be known that Xia Qingying was one of the earlier players to start purchasing eternal coins. She had also hired players in the Eternal Realm to farm for eternal coins. Yet, even until now, she had only accumulated several eternal gold coins. If even Xia Qingying had little success, it went without saying that he, who was only an elder of the Green God Corporation, had fared even worse. Meanwhile, Shifeng couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised by Yang Hua's revelation. If the transaction could be settled using eternal coins, he might be able to get in on some of the action. As Yang Hua continued to explain the auction rules, the elevator eventually stopped on the 210th floor. The auction venue on the 210th floor could accommodate up to 10,000 people. Currently, though, the place was packed, and if not for Yang Hua having reserved a VIP room ahead of time, they might not even have had a place to sit. The auction participants were either representatives of conglomerates or executives of upper-ranking hegemonic powers. It was normally difficult for players to see even one of these individuals, but now they were everywhere. The auction had already been ongoing for some time when the group arrived, and the Eternal Realm's town properties were currently being auctioned. Meanwhile, without exception, every property was bought at an overpriced price. Even a shop in a small town's outer area could go for 10 eternal gold, while shops in the town center could go from anywhere between 20 to 30 eternal gold. When Shifeng saw this, he instantly lost interest in participating in the auction. In his opinion, any town property players could get their hands on in the current Eternal Realm should not be worth more than 3 or 4 eternal gold. After all, players in the Eternal Realm currently only had access to towns situated on level 140 maps. In a few more days, the player population in these towns would plummet as everyone moved to higher-leveled locations. Unless these towns were situated near high-value resource nodes, their properties would quickly lose value. Meanwhile, a fortune of 20 eternal coins was already enough to buy a piece of prime real estate in the central area of an NPC city. Sometime later. Up next will be the star for today, the beautiful auctioneer on stage said, pausing for a moment. This next auction will be a special auction. The next auction item is not a town property but is something related to the upcoming neutral NPC city, the Crystal City of Secret. Upon hearing the auctioneer's introduction, the audience held their breath in anticipation. Previously, the town properties sold throughout the auction was of little economic value. The various powers were only buying these properties to prepare a place for their soon-to-arrive Tier 6 armies to familiarize themselves with the Eternal Realm's environment and occupy parts of the Eternal Realm. But it was a different story for a neutral NPC city. That would be a place necessary for players to move around in the Eternal Realm. It was a place players could live in regardless of how high of a level they reached. The Crystal City of Secrets. Shifeng was also shocked as he looked at the holographic city model displayed on stage. In the previous life, there was a common saying in the Eternal Realm that had spread across the entire Greater God's domain. 7 cities, 4 towers, and 3 absolutes. The 7 cities and 4 towers referred to the 11 most populated places in the Eternal Realm, while the 3 absolutes referred to 3 peerless players. Meanwhile, these 11 locations and 3 individuals could rival an entire realm in a literal sense. Among them, the Crystal City of Secrets was one of the 7 cities. It was also known as the Secret Treasure Mine. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3414, Chapter 488, One-Man Conglomerate. Chapter 3414, Chapter 488, One-Man Conglomerate. Chapter 488, One-Man Conglomerate. Crap. This Crystal City of Secrets is amazing. It even comes with a natural underground secret land, as expected of the Dark Star auction house. Even though our conglomerate's members are operating near that city, none have managed to discover the city thus far. But this city truly is impressive. With a secret land that has a level range of 120 to 200, players won't even have to step out of the city to grind for levels. It also means that the value of the city's lands and shops will only increase with time. The audience grew breathless from excitement as they read the Crystal City of Secrets general information provided by the auction house. Members of the various conglomerates and upper-ranking hegemonic powers were especially excited. The future value of the Crystal City of Secrets was apparent even to fools. Particularly, once the Eternal Realm's location in the Greater God's domain was discovered and large numbers of players swarmed into the Eternal Realm, the city's value would skyrocket. After all, the value of a city's properties increased along with the number of players gathered in the city. By the way, I have something to tell everyone. The beautiful auctioneer on the stage smiled as she looked at the excited crowd. I'm sure everyone present has already heard about the secret treasures obtained from the recently conquered World Mode Team dungeon, right? Well, as it so happens, the monsters in the Crystal City of Secrets underground Crystal Palace also have a very small chance of dropping secret treasures. As soon as the auctioneer announced the news about the secret treasures, the atmosphere in the auction hall changed instantly. If before the hall's atmosphere was enthusiastic, now it was like the calm before the storm, and the whole venue had become extremely quiet. However, this kind of quiet only lasted for 2 seconds. I'm buying it. Whatever you're selling, no matter how much it costs, I'll buy it. Secret treasure. I must have one of those secret treasures. Quickly. Contact the higher-ups and have them prepare more fund. Buy every eternal coin that's available on the market right now. The Eternal Chamber of Commerce must be crazy. Why didn't they announce such important news ahead of time? How am I supposed to get enough eternal coins now? The entire audience went crazy as they looked at the Crystal City of Secrets holographic projection on the stage. Even Yang Hua and Xia Qingying could no longer sit still, both using every connection they had to source more eternal coins. Meanwhile, Shifeng was rendered speechless when he saw how the auctioneer had riled up everyone's emotions. Unlike everyone else present, Shifeng knew that the auctioneer was withholding information. It was true that the Crystal City of Secrets' underground Crystal Palace dropped secret treasures. However, players looking to enter the underground Crystal Palace had to pay a hefty price to do so. More specifically, they had to pay a significant amount of eternal coins and 7 luminaries crystals. Moreover, the entrance fee would change depending on the player's level. The higher a player's level, the greater the fee they would have to pay. As an example, if a level 200 player tried to enter the underground Crystal Palace, they would have to pay a fee of 10 eternal gold and 1,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal. Furthermore, once inside, players could only stay for a maximum of 3 days. And should they die inside, they would lose their chance to raid the secret land and could only enter again after a 4-day cooldown period. The cost and risks involved in raiding the underground Crystal Palace were utterly unbearable for most players in the current Eternal Realm. Ladies and gentlemen, please hold on for a moment. I haven't finished yet, the beautiful auctioneer said to calm the crowd. As I mentioned before, this is a special auction in that you don't have to pay on the spot. Instead, we will need your help in completing a quest that requires a large number of eternal coins. The starting bid for this auction is 100 eternal gold, with a deposit of 10 eternal gold. Once you win the bid, should you fail to pay the promised amount in time, your deposit will be confiscated. The auctioneer paused for a moment to let the audience process her words. Then, she continued, however, should you pay the promised amount, you will receive 5 underground palace emblems after we complete the quest. These emblems are epic-ranked items that passively let wearers gain noble status in the Crystal City of Secrets. Besides that, they also have 2 active abilities. The first ability allows the wearer to open a portal to the underground Crystal Palace from anywhere in the Eternal Realm. You can also return to the location where you entered from. The cooldown time for this ability is 1 day. The second ability has to be used inside the underground Crystal Palace, and it allows the wearer to open a portal to any of the palace's zones that are under level 150. With this ability, you won't have to waste your 3-day time limit in the secret land traveling across the level 120 zone. If none of the distinguished guests present have any objections, let the auction begin. As soon as the auctioneer finished introducing the auction item and auction rules, the faces of the audience members turned even more frenzied. I bid 120 gold. None of you here should even think of competing with me. I bid 150. I'll fight anyone who tries to outbid me. Move out of the way. I'm the vice guild leader of Flaming Bee, and I bid 200 gold. Anyone who outbids me will be making an enemy out of a pseudo-apex power. While the Crystal City of Secrets lands and shops were valuable, there was a prerequisite to purchasing them. One needed to be a noble of the city. Meanwhile, to do so meant acquiring enough reputation points. This was an arduous process that even the conglomerates and upper-ranking hegemonic powers had a headache dealing with. Now, though, they could directly purchase noble status in the city. This was far more valuable of an opportunity for the various powers than purchasing any land or shop directly. After only a short moment, the auction price had increased from the starting bid of 100 eternal gold to 240 eternal gold. Even the galaxy conglomerate's wealthy fourth princess would be astonished by the vast fortune being thrown here. With 240 eternal gold, one could buy at least a dozen properties in the Eternal Realm's NPC cities. Yet, now, such a fortune was being used to purchase only 5 epic-ranked emblems. Damn it. These people are crazy. Does Flaming Bee have to bid 260 gold just for a couple of emblems? Yang Hua cursed, frustration filling his eyes as he looked at the only 80-odd pieces of eternal gold coins in his hand. Flaming Bee has many experts in the Eternal Realm, Uncle Yang Hua. They've also offered sky-high prices to attract coin farmers to help them. We stand no chance against them, Xia Qingying said in an attempt to soothe Yang Hua's frustration. Rather than focus on the emblems, let's think about how we will compete for the secret treasures coming up next. You're right. Yang Hua calmed down a little bit, quickly understanding that a pseudo-apex power like Flaming Bee was completely outside of the Blaze Conglomerates League. However, just when the two were about to give up, a low voice suddenly sounded in their ears. It's still too early to give up. If you two are willing to cooperate with me, I can win this auction and give each of you an emblem afterward. What do you think? Xie Qingying and Yang Hua both turned to Shifeng in surprise. It was especially so for Yang Hua. In his eyes, Shifeng was just another one of Xie Qingying's followers, and without her, Shifeng wouldn't even be qualified to enter here. I'm not trying to doubt you, young man, but do you understand the value of 260 eternal gold coins? Patiently, Yang Hua explained, even if we recklessly bid and win the auction now, we'll only end up losing 10 eternal gold later if we can't pay up. Or are you saying you can guarantee we can afford to pay the bill afterward? Guarantee? Shifeng couldn't help but smile at Yang Hua's words. Subsequently, he took out the deeds to the properties he had recently bought in the Lightless Fortress and asked, will these deeds be enough? Yang Hua initially remained skeptical when he heard Shifeng's response, so he simply took a quick look at the deeds with a carefree heart. However, upon seeing the content of the deeds, he was greatly shocked. A level 160 fortresses property, and 4 of them as well. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 34:15, Chapter 489, Initial Partnership. Chapter 34:15, Chapter 489, Initial Partnership. Chapter 489, Initial Partnership Properties of a Level 160 Fortress. Upon reading the deeds Shifeng shared, Yang Hua wasn't the only one to react in surprise. Xie Qingying, who was familiar with Shifeng's situation, was similarly stunned. Currently, all of the Greater God's domain's major powers were seeking a way to establish themselves in the Eternal Realm. However, thus far, even upper-ranking hegemonic powers have only managed to secure a small number of properties in the Eternal Realm. Moreover, every one of these properties belonged to level 140 towns. In terms of value, these town properties were vastly inferior to a fortress's properties. This was because while towns could act as rest and transfer points for merchant caravans, they did not come equipped with an airport. Due to environmental factors, even Tier 5 players could not fly in the Eternal Realm. Hence, if current players wished to travel great distances quickly, their only option would be to head to the nearest fortress and use the airport there. This, in turn, made fortress properties incredibly valuable. The fact that fortresses existed in small numbers and earning reputation points in these fortresses was incredibly challenging and only made their properties even more valuable. Currently, even the most inconspicuous property in a level 140 fortress could sell for roughly 4 or 5 prime real estates of a level 140 town. If it was a property situated near the fortress's airport, its value would automatically double. As for the properties of a level 160 fortress, not even the various pseudo-apex powers had gotten their hands on one thus far. Yet, Shifeng had brought out 4 properties belonging to a level 160 fortress. Moreover, all 4 properties were situated near the airport. Where did you find this person, Vice President Xie? Invincible Swallow quietly asked Xie Qingying. Shifeng's display of strength just now was already plenty astonishing. However, even that achievement would become insignificant compared to the 4 deeds Shifeng just brought out. Although Invincible Swallow wasn't currently present in the Eternal Realm, he could still tell how valuable the Eternal Realm's fortress properties were going by the audience's behavior in this auction. So, he knew that a level 160 fortress's properties were definitely outside the reach of someone like him. In fact, even Yang Hua, a member of the Blaze Conglomerate's board of directors, was unlikely to have access to such properties. Xie Qingying glanced at Invincible Swallow and slowly said, "Would you believe me if I said I found him from the miniature ancient world? What do you think?" Invincible Swallow rolled his eyes at Xie Qingying. The Eternal Realm was a gathering of major powers, many of which surpassed the likes of the Green God Corporation. Meanwhile, the miniature ancient world was merely a subsidiary world of the Green God Corporation's homeworld. How could a big shot like Shifeng possibly come from there? Suit yourself, Xie Qingying nonchalantly said. She didn't take their conversation seriously since she never expected Invincible Swallow to believe her to begin with. Only, the gaze she used to look at Shifeng had subtly changed after this revelation. While Xie Qingying and Invincible Swallow whispered to each other, Yang Hua took a deep breath and solemnly looked at Shifeng. He no longer looked at Shifeng as another one of Xia Qingying's followers but as an equal instead. I admit that you have convinced me, young man, Yang Hua said with interest. Tell me, what kind of partnership do you have in mind? Yang Hua's willingness to cooperate did not surprise anyone present. With those 4 golden properties, Shifeng could easily win this auction by himself. There was no need for him to collaborate with others. Simple. After putting away the deeds, Shifeng calmly said, I have a way for us to secure enough eternal gold after the auction. However, in exchange for sharing my method, after deducting the amount required to pay off the auction, I want 70% of the remaining total profit, while Vice President Xia will take 10%. Although Shifeng could win the bid by selling the Lightless Fortress's properties, he would also lose access to 4 money printing machines. He would be losing out significantly in the long run. After all, the 100 Eyes Canyon's value was no less than the underground Crystal Palace to players. Yet, he currently lacked the ability to make a large amount of eternal coins by himself. To do so, he would need to partner with someone well-connected. Meanwhile, upon hearing Shifeng's words, Xia Qingying couldn't help but look at the man in surprise. Originally, she thought that she would be fortunate if she could obtain even one of the underground palace emblems. She didn't expect to also get a share of the business proposal Shifeng was making. Moreover, her share was half of that of the Blaze conglomerates. It should be known that the Blaze conglomerate was leagues above the Green God Corporation. If not for her being acquainted with an elder in the Eternal Chamber of Commerce, she would have never gotten the opportunity to meet a big shot like Yang Hua. Do I only get 20%? Yang Hua frowned slightly. Young man, if I'm not mistaken, you're planning to use Blaze's connections to make money in the Eternal Realm, right? I'm not trying to boast, but even among the powers here, few are as well connected as Blaze. Don't you think 20% is too little? Hearing Yang Hua expressing his dissatisfaction, Xia Qingying thought of giving up her own share of the profits. After all, it was a fact that her presence in this transaction was negligible. However, before Xia Qingying could speak, Shifeng got ahead of her and said, You are correct, Mr. Yang. I do need the Blaze conglomerate's connections in the Eternal Realm. After a slight pause, Shifeng continued, but even without the Blaze conglomerate's connections, I can still implement the method I mentioned regardless. I might not make as much, but it will still be a sizable sum. The Blaze conglomerate, on the other hand, would have lost significant profits and an opportunity to establish a foothold in the Crystal City of Secrets ahead of others. The Blaze conglomerate might not be as powerful as the Galaxy conglomerate in the Greater God's domain, but it was superior to the Galaxy conglomerate when it came to the roots it had spread across the Eternal Realm. Even the Eternal Chamber of Commerce would be amazed if it got to see the full extent of the Blaze conglomerate's forces in the Eternal Realm. It was also why the Blaze conglomerate managed to establish a powerful foundation for itself during the Eternal Realm's early stages and grow into a pseudo-apex power during the later stages. Meanwhile, Shifeng's words left Yang Hua speechless for a moment. Okay, I accept your offer. Seeing the increasingly intense bidding for the underground palace emblems, Yang Hua ultimately chose to concede. But we have to establish the God's domain contract now. Yang Hua ended his words with a huff. In the past, he had only ever seen others begging the Blaze conglomerate for a partnership. Some of these people even included individuals with great renown in the Greater God's domain. Yet, when it came to Shifeng, the young man had left him feeling utterly defeated. Anyone with a properly working brain could determine the underground Crystal Palace's importance. If the Blaze conglomerate could get its hands on the underground palace emblem, even if it was just one, it would be enough to let the conglomerate secure a stable foothold in the Crystal City of Secrets ahead of the various other powers. Unfortunately, the Blaze conglomerate wasn't in a position to bargain with Shifeng for more benefits. After all, while Shifeng had the option of partnering with other powers to win the underground palace emblems, the Blaze conglomerates only had Shifeng as an option for a partner in this endeavor. Naturally, Shifeng faintly smiled. In reality, had Yang Hua insisted on asking for more shares, Shifeng was already prepared to give the Blaze conglomerate an additional 10%. After all, the Blaze conglomerate's connections in the Eternal Realm were vastly superior to the average conglomerate. If he wanted to get in touch with a power of similar caliber, It would take him a lot of time to do so. In no time, Shifeng, Yang Hua, and Xia Qingying signed a three-way God's domain contract. According to the contract stipulations, any party that violated the contract's terms would not only lose all their personal possessions in God's domain to the other contract parties, but they would also permanently lose access to God's domain. It was an extremely harsh penalty. Just you wait, you little brat. After signing the contract, Yang Hua secretly smiled. Let's see how you'll beg me for help once you get to the Crystal City of Secrets. At that time, I'll teach you how to respect your elders. As the Crystal City of Secrets was one of the few NPC cities currently discovered in the Eternal Realm, many powers sought to establish a foothold in it. After learning of the city's whereabouts, Yang Hua already knew there would be at least 3 pseudo-apex powers moving into the city. With these 3 titans based in the city, even upper-ranking hegemonic powers would have difficulty surviving there, let alone individual players. While Shifeng was finalizing his partnership details with Yang Hua and Xia Qingying, the bidding in the auction venue continued, and the price kept on climbing to new highs. I bid 290 gold. I bid 300 gold. When the vice guild leader of Flaming Bee shouted his bid of 300 eternal gold with bloodshot eyes, the whole auction venue fell silent as this price had already exceeded the budget of most of the powers present. Only a few powers were still busily contacting other powers, hoping to join forces for one last bid. After waiting a moment and seeing no new bids being made, the beautiful auctioneer raised the gavel in her hand, intending to start the first of the last 3 calls. However, before her gavel could hit the bell in front of her, a low and plain voice suddenly came from one of the VIP rooms in the venue. 500 gold. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3416, Chapter 490, City Maps Unlocked. Chapter 3416, Chapter 490, City Maps Unlocked. Chapter 490, City Maps Unlocked. The plain voice coming from the VIP room elicited a gasp from everyone in the auction hall. 500. Is this person crazy? That's already enough money to buy 1 or 2 legendary weapons. Could it be an Apex Powers successor? Everyone in the audience looked up at the VIP room on the 2nd floor, each guessing who could be inside and possess such terrifying wealth. The Dark Star Auction House's VIP rooms had a privacy function preventing others from seeing the situation inside. So long as a VIP room's guest did not choose to let others see the state of their room, they would be shielded from the prying eyes of others. This was one of the safety measures taken by the Eternal Chamber of Commerce to protect its guests. Damn it! Which Apex power is standing in my way? The Vice Guild leader of Flaming Bee's face turned red with anger and frustration as he looked at the room where the latest bid came from. Flaming Bee might be a pseudo-Apex power, but the price of 500 eternal gold coins was already way beyond its budget. At this stage of the Eternal Realm, only Apex powers could possibly afford to spend 500 eternal gold on a single investment. Meanwhile, the voice of the person who made the bid obviously came from a young man. However, there was no way any ordinary young man could have 500 eternal gold lying around. Even the average executive of an Apex power would not have the authority to spend 500 eternal gold. So, the only logical conclusion was that the young man was the successor of an Apex power. Realizing this, Flaming Bee's Vice Guild leader had no choice but to swallow this defeat. After a short surprise, the beautiful auctioneer on the stage couldn't help but look at the VIP room on the 2nd floor and softly ask, "Esteemed guest, are you sure you want to bid 500 gold? Even if the Eternal Chamber of Commerce had announced the sale of the Underground Palace emblems ahead of time, it would have been highly unlikely for the emblems to sell for a fortune of 500 eternal gold. This was because there were far too few players in the Eternal Realm right now, making it difficult to earn eternal coins. Although there was the option of purchasing eternal coins from other players using real-world resources, there were many powers frantically seeking to purchase eternal coins at a high price. As a result, even Apex powers could only get their hands on a limited amount of eternal coins. At this time, though, the audience and auctioneer weren't the only ones surprised by this bid. Even Yang Hua and Xia Qingying, who sat in the VIP room where the bid came from, were greatly surprised. 500 G. 500 eternal gold coins. Even if they sold all their possessions in the eternal realm, they couldn't come up with such a fortune. Yes, I am bidding 500 gold. Can you start the countdown now, Miss Auctioneer? Chiffon casually asked. Of course, the beautiful host laughed awkwardly and immediately began the bidding process. 500 gold going once. 500 gold going twice. 500 gold going thrice. Congratulations to the guest in room number 5 for winning the partnership opportunity for the Crystal City of Secret. As the auctioneer announced the end of the bidding, the whole auction hall was once again shocked. Not only because the 5 epic emblems were sold at a sky-high price but more so because of how Chiffon had placed his bid. Is this the strength of an apex power? Flaming Bee's vice guild leader really has bad luck coming across an apex power's successor. I wonder which apex power that person comes from. As expected of the Eternal Chamber of Commerce. Even the successors of other apex powers are drawn to do business with it. It's a pity we cannot get to know this person. Many of the youths seated on the first floor's audience seats were only attending this auction for the sake of experience. When these youths saw the conclusion of the auction lot, they couldn't help but turn around to look at the second floor's VIP room number 5, their eyes full of awe and admiration. An apex power. There were only a very small number of apex powers in the greater God's domain, and these powers stood at the very pinnacle of the game. Even a pseudo-apex power like Flaming Bee could only keep its head down in front of these apex powers, as competing against any apex power would mean grave consequences. However, while the auction hall's first floor was in an uproar, the atmosphere in the second floor's VIP room number 5 was somewhat strenuous. Guild leader Black Flame. Yang Hua's face was livid as he looked at Chiffon, his eyes full of disbelief. That's 500 eternal gold we are talking about. While placing such a bid might stop Flaming Bee from putting up a fight, we can't come up with such an amount, even if we sell all 4 of your properties. How are we supposed to make up for the rest? Xia Qingyu nodded in agreement. She felt that Chiffon had gone overboard with his bidding. After all, this was the liquidity of 2 pseudo-apex powers they were talking about. 2. Even if they pooled all of their manpower and resources together, they couldn't even come close to matching 1 pseudo-apex power, let alone 2. I admit that 500 gold is a significant amount, Chiffon said, nodding as he turned to look at Yang Hua and Xia Qingying. Then, he calmly continued, but if we proceed according to my plan, it should not be difficult for us to earn 500 gold. Not difficult. Yang Hua was momentarily rendered speechless. According to the auction house's conditions, they had, at most, 3 days to complete the payment. In other words, they needed to earn 500 eternal gold coins in 3 days. Not even apex powers could necessarily guarantee they could earn so many eternal coins in such a short period. Anyway, just follow my plan. If it's not enough, you can use my properties as collateral. Chiffon didn't bother to go into the details. Instead, he simply assigned Yang Hua and Xia Qingying the task of collecting as many earthen magic flowers as they could. The earthen magic flower was not a rare herb. It could be found everywhere in the eternal realm. However, if Chiffon had only himself to rely on, he would only be able to collect a very limited amount. After all, he had to travel from town to town by himself. He'd be fortunate if he could buy out the earthen magic flowers of 2 or 3 towns before players discovered the herb's importance. However, it was a different story for Yang Hua and Xia Qingying. They had hired many experts across the eternal realm, so they could collect earthen magic flowers from many more towns than Chiffon could. Meanwhile, the Holy Race players' sphere of activity wasn't limited to just one region in the eternal realm but everywhere in the eternal realm. So long as human players and Holy Race players started to fight out in the fields, the price of earthen magic flowers would skyrocket. There also wouldn't be a need to worry about the herbs falling. After all, while earthen magic flowers might be ordinary herbs, they still needed time to regrow. Moreover, the earthen magic flower was a herb unique to the eternal realm, so even after players outside the eternal realm arrived, there wouldn't be a sudden influx of the herb. Although Yang Hua and Xia Qingying were skeptical about Chiffon's plan, They followed his instructions nonetheless and began collecting earth and magic flowers in bulk after leaving Darkstar. They bought the herb at a unified price of 1 eternal copper for every 10 earth and magic flowers. They also offered the option of exchanging real-world resources for earth and magic flowers. This created an opportunity for resellers to make a small profit, which, in turn, encouraged more players to gather earth and magic flowers for Yang Hua and Xia Qingying. As for Shi Feng himself, he didn't idle around either. After leaving Darkstar and returning to the Eternal Realm, he promptly rode the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon to the 3 nearest towns. Then, he spent his 2 remaining Eternal Gold coins to purchase earth and magic flowers in large quantities. While Shi Feng was stockpiling earth and magic flowers, news that excited all players and powers in the Eternal Realm spread. The maps for the various NPC cities were finally unlocked. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3417, Chapter 491, Flower Frenzy. Chapter 3417, Chapter 491, Flower Frenzy. Chapter 491, Flower Frenzy. Brothers. Charge. The entrance tokens to Bloodhell City will be ours. All teams, split up and report any regional bosses you find right away. We must not let players from other powers get to these bosses. The guild leader has promised a reward of 100,000 star coins to whoever gets an entrance token. With the unlocking of the various city maps, the various powers operating in the Eternal Realm frantically mobilized their teams to level 150+ maps housing NPC cities. Even independent players couldn't help but make their way to these city maps, hoping to get their hands on a city token. NPC cities were much rarer in the Eternal Realm than NPC towns, with there being only 1 city for every 10 or so towns. NPC cities were also transportation hubs that connected various parts of the Eternal Realm, and players of all levels needed to enter NPC cities regardless of their level to develop and live in the Eternal Realm. Therefore, the land and shops in NPC cities were suitable for long-term holding, and players wouldn't have trouble reselling them at high prices. Not to mention that there were far more opportunities in NPC cities than in NPC towns. Meanwhile, the sooner a player entered an NPC city, the greater their chances of obtaining these opportunities. Simply put, NPC cities were crucial for players and powers to secure an advantage in the Eternal Realm. It was especially so for the various powers. In the Greater God's domain, NPC towns did not have the ability to let guilds establish guild residences, only NPC cities did. For a power to develop quickly, a guild residence was crucial. 1. With a guild residence, a guild's members could enjoy various guild benefits and special treatment in the city the residence was in. This, in turn, would make guild members more cohesive. If a guild had a guild residence, expert players would also be more willing to join it and contribute to the guild's growth. Silver Frost City, Green God Corporation's branch headquarters. Aren't we being a little too reckless, Vice President? Lu Wen, dressed in work clothes, asked Xia Qingying in concern when she read the report on the latest batch of earth and magic flowers they bought. Not only have we spent all of our eternal coins purchasing earth and magic flowers, but we have also traded away many resources. After this latest purchase, our forces in the Eternal Realm can't even afford to replenish their consumables. If we can't resell these earth and magic flowers, our plans in the Eternal Realm will be ruined. Thus far, they have already collected 31 million earth and magic flowers across 60+ towns in the Eternal Realm. In order to collect this amount, they had to spend all of the eternal coins they had accumulated and even mortgage more than 10 properties in a second-tier city. If they couldn't sell these earth and magic flowers, all of the efforts they've made in the Eternal Realm would have been for naught. After all, earth and magic flowers were common in the Eternal Realm, and it was normally difficult to even sell them in small quantities, let alone a whopping 31 million. We don't have a choice. 500 eternal gold is no small amount. If we don't have enough earth and magic flowers, it could become a big problem later, Xia Qingying said. However, even she couldn't help but be dubious of Shi Feng's plan. After all, even though the various city maps were now unlocked and the various powers and independent players were madly scrambling for entrance tokens, it remained to be seen that demand for earthen magic flowers would increase. At the same time, Yang Hua was also under great pressure. Yang Hua had similarly amassed a massive stockpile of earthen magic flowers. More specifically, he had collected a total of 31.6 million earthen magic flowers. He had basically utilized all of his connections and authority in the Blaze conglomerate to collect this common herb from all over the Eternal Realm. Currently, because of his massive acquisition, the prices of earthen magic flowers have indeed increased. Initially, it was 1 eternal copper for 20 earthen magic flowers. Now, it was 1 eternal copper for 12 earthen magic flowers. However, even then, he would still make a humongous loss if he sold his earthen magic flowers at such a price. Eternal Realm, Blood Hell Mountain Range. Amidst the vast mountains covered in a faint blood-red mist, a team of several dozen players was resting beside the corpse of a level 152 legendary boss. These players were all tier 5 players, and their levels were all above 144. Many of these players were also 5th floor experts, and they were led by Morrow, the 7th Vice Guild leader of the Red Dragon Nation. In addition to the legendary boss's corpse, there were also hundreds of player corpses in the area. Among these player corpses, some belonged to human players, while the rest belonged to Holy Race players. Lord Morrow, our scouts have found another batch of Holy Race teams rushing towards us. We must leave here quickly, the Wind Saint Desert Webb said as he approached Morrow, who was in the middle of looting the boss. Damn those lunatics. How many of them are there? Morrow's face turned gloomy when he heard the news. Can't those who have been resurrected fight normally yet? Competition in the city maps was far more intense than Morrow expected. Not only did he have to compete against other powers, but he also had to face the troublesome Holy Race players. To make matters worse, anyone killed by a Holy Race player would be put in an unstable mana state after getting resurrected, making them unsuitable for combat. In less than half a day, nearly half of the several thousand players he mobilized into the Bloodhell mountain range had been put out of commission. This situation would greatly impact his ability to compete for Bloodhell City's entrance tokens. Not yet. Whether it is those resurrected using resurrection spells or those resurrected at the nearest town, nobody can get rid of the unstable mana status, Desert Webb said, shaking his head. Based on the research of our guild's Grandmaster alchemists, I'm afraid the only way to get rid of this status is by taking mana stabilizers. In that case, why aren't those alchemists making more mana stabilizers? Frowning, Morrow commanded, if they're lacking recipes, just buy them above market price. I want those out of commissions ready for combat as soon as possible. In response to Morrow's command, Desert Webb revealed an awkward expression as he said, the Alchemy Association sells the recipe for mana stabilizers, so we have no trouble getting it. But the main ingredient, earthen magic flowers, is now out of stock in the market. Out of stock? Morrow was surprised. Isn't the earthen magic flower a basic herb? How can it be out of stock? When those alchemists realized that mana stabilizers were our only solution, they promptly tried to buy more earthen magic flowers. You can say that we bought out every earthen magic flower that was within our reach. But for some reason, the flowers are in short supply right now, and we only managed to purchase a couple hundred. We can only make a little over 100 bottles with that amount, Desert Webb explained. It might not sound like a lot, but we can already be considered lucky. I heard other powers are willing to pay 1 eternal copper coin for 1 earthen magic flower, yet they didn't manage to buy even 10 earthen magic flowers. Damn it. Someone is definitely hoarding the flowers. Morrow frowned. But I won't let these people rip us off so easily. Since we can't get any from Scott Town, we'll buy them in other towns. I refuse to believe we won't be able to find any. Then, I'll have some people go to other towns immediately. Desert Webb nodded. At the same time as Morrow acted, the various powers operating in the Bloodhell mountain range similarly started trying to buy earthen magic flowers from other towns. However, the result they all got was surprisingly consistent. Out of stock. TL notes. 1. Guild residents. I am not sure if this is supposed to be guild residents. The raws used, which translates to guild stronghold base. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 34:18, Chapter 492, Terrifying Wealth. Chapter 34:18, Chapter 492, Terrifying Wealth. Chapter 492, Terrifying Wealth. Silver Frost City, Green God Corporation's branch headquarters. Vice Guild Leader, the guild leader of Three-Tailed Eagle, suddenly contacted us, saying he wants to buy some earthen magic flowers from us. He's willing to buy them at 1 eternal copper per flower. He is even willing to negotiate if you aren't satisfied with the price, Lu Wen excitedly reported to Xia Qingying as she entered the office. The Three-Tailed Eagle was an upper-ranking hegemonic power in the Starlight Realm. It was also one of the several dominant powers in the Silver Frost City. Normally, it would be impossible for them to even see the vice guild leaders of the Three-Tailed Eagle. Yet, now, Three-Tailed Eagle's guild leader was personally contacting them. It seems he has quite the sensitive ears. I guess we can sell him some as a favor, Xia Qingying said, smiling. But we can't sell him too many. Tell him that we can only sell him 10,000 flowers and that we use for the rest. Understood. Lu Wen nodded. After Lu Wen left the office, Xia Qingying carefully reviewed the communication records from Dark Star. Among them were vice guild leaders and guild leaders of upper-ranking hegemonic powers and executives of conglomerates. All these people contacted her, hoping to purchase earthen magic flowers. Meanwhile, every one of them offered to purchase the flowers for more than 1 eternal copper per flower. No wonder he didn't look worried. He can easily make over 1,000 eternal gold from this endeavor, let alone 500. Xia Qingying couldn't help but be amazed and impressed by Shifeng's capabilities as she looked at the list of communication records before her. Personally, Xia Qingying considered having several dozen eternal gold coins as already being wealthy beyond measure. After all, this was roughly how much an upper-ranking hegemonic power operating in the eternal realm currently possessed. Yet, now, Shifeng had so easily earned over 1,000 eternal gold. Even she, who would only receive a 10% cut of the profits, could still earn over 100 eternal gold. This fortune was already enough to rival the wealth of pseudo-apex powers. Meanwhile, in a certain VIP lounge in the Darkstar auction house. Old Yang, you are too much. We've been friends for so many years. Yet, now that you've struck a gold mine, you don't even want to sell me 1,000,000 earthen magic flowers? It's not like I'm refusing to pay you. An imposing man who looked to be in his 40s and wearing the Eternal Chamber of Commerce's Vice Guild Leader emblem said indignantly as he looked at Yang Hua. Shoo. 1,000,000 earthen magic flowers? You might as well rob me. Not even my precious daughter has asked me for so many, Yang Hua said as he gave the imposing man a look of disdain. 5 million. That's the most I can sell you. Also, it's going to cost you 600 gold. No negotiations. Deal. 5 million it is. You sneaky old bastard. What kind of luck do you have to have collected so many earthen magic flowers? I bet you're going to make a fortune this time, the imposing man said. Then, he begrudgingly transferred 200 eternal gold to Yang Hua and continued, this is a deposit. I'll pay the remaining 400 gold within 3 days. A fortune? Yang Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard the imposing man's comment. Indeed, Yang Hua had made a profit, but it was only a paltry amount compared to Shifeng's share. At this time, Yang Hua deeply regretted not asking for 10 or 20% more previously. It should be known that he had collected over 30 million earthen magic flowers. Going by current market conditions, he could easily earn 3,500 eternal gold from reselling them. After factoring in the flowers Xia Qingying collected and deducting the cost of the flowers and the 500 eternal gold they needed to pay for the auction, 10% of the profits could easily amount to 300 eternal gold or more. That was already comparable to the liquidity of an entire pseudo-apex power. As time passed, and the intensity of battles between human players and holy race players in the various city maps continued to increase, the price of earthen magic flowers reached 3 eternal copper per 2 flowers on the second day of the city map's activation. Even Shifeng was surprised by the soaring demand for earthen magic flowers. He only had his stall open in Pharos town for less than half an hour, yet he had already sold more than 200,000 earthen magic flowers, receiving 36 shiny eternal gold coins. But even more astonishing were the profits made by Yang Hua and Xia Qingying. In just one day, they had already raised 500 eternal gold, completed the auction transaction, and received the 5 underground palace emblems. Personally, Shifeng had earned more than 800 eternal gold through a Darkstar transaction, and with the eternal gold coins earned from selling earthen magic flowers, he now had a mind-blowing wealth of 903 eternal gold. No wonder those alchemists in the past managed to secure so many properties, with some even having as many properties as hegemonic powers. Shifeng fell into a daze as he looked at the eternal coins in his bag. A fortune of 903 eternal gold was something even apex powers could not take out in the current stage of the eternal realm. He could buy an entire street in an NPC city with such wealth. Even if it was a large NPC city like the Crystal City of Secrets, he could afford to purchase 20 to 30 properties with this amount of money. If handled correctly, the income these properties generated could make even upper-ranking hegemonic powers feel envy. But Shifeng soon shook his head and gave up these temptations. I initially thought I wouldn't have a chance, but now I can probably give it a try, Shifeng thought, excitement coloring his eyes. Certainly, the various NPC cities' shops and lands were of great value. It was especially so for the shops and lands of the Crystal City of Secrets, one of the Eternal Realm's future 7 great cities. But owning a mere 20 or 30 shops in the Crystal City of Secrets was far from enough if one wanted to develop a power in the Eternal Realm. While the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers and conglomerates might not be as wealthy as he was right now in the Eternal Realm, it should be known that their forces were scattered across the Eternal Realm's various regions and developing in unison. Their progress in the beginning might be slow, but as time passed, their development rate would only become faster and faster. At one point, simply the influence and trade channels they had in the various towns and cities would be enough to bring them tremendous wealth to surpass the income those 20 or 30 shops in the Crystal City of Secrets could generate. Not to mention, Shifeng could only make a fortune because he had taken advantage of the Holy Race's invasion. After this, there would no longer be any more opportunities to make such a fortune. If he wanted to continue to make a lot of money, he would have to follow in the footsteps of those powers in the previous life and pay a fortune to buy an NPC city's transportation firm. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3419, Chapter 493, Golden Party. Chapter 3419, Chapter 493, Golden Party. Chapter 493, Golden Party. If I buy the Crystal City's transportation firm, I wonder if the brilliant sky temple of my past life will go crazy. Shifeng was filled with complicated feelings as he looked at the underground palace emblem in his hand. The Eternal Realm was a unique existence in the greater God's domain. Unlike other realms that were already well developed, the entire Eternal Realm was still in its infancy. There existed no kingdoms or empires in the Eternal Realm, only NPC cities. As a result, the functional buildings of each NPC city, such as auction houses, airports, and transportation firms, could all be bought by players. In other realms, players were only limited to purchasing the shops and lands of NPC cities. Of course, the cost of buying these industrial buildings was unimaginable, and the cost would only increase along with the city's population. In the later stages, it would cost over 100,000 eternal gold just to buy an ordinary NPC city's airport. On top of that, there was also a high management fee of several tens of thousands of eternal gold to be paid every month. If one could not afford the management fee, the industry building would be confiscated immediately. Without strong financial resources and influence, not only could one not make money through industry buildings, but one would also lose money to the point of bankruptcy. In Shifeng's previous life, some upper-ranking hegemonic powers had even fallen into ruin because of their greed. As for the brilliant Sky Temple, it was originally only a top-ranking hegemonic power that was close to becoming a pseudo-apex power in Shifeng's previous life. Meanwhile, the guild became a laughingstock among everyone in the Eternal Realm's early stages because it decided to purchase the Crystal City of Secrets transportation firm. However, sometime after its purchase, it had quickly grown from an upper-ranking hegemonic power into a bona fide apex power in the greater God's domain, its feat stupefying the various pseudo-apex powers. Transportation firms were not profitable in the Eternal Realms' early and mid stages, and this was because of the Holy Race's presence. The constant harassment of the Holy Race players became a strong deterrent for players to become merchants. After all, even if a merchant caravan could successfully fight off the Holy Race players they came across, most of the caravan would be destroyed by the end of the fight. Not only would merchants not earn a single coin, but they might even lose money because of their destroyed goods. Therefore, there were no players willing to take on such tasks. Since owners of transportation firms made their money from intermediary fees, they would have no income if no player was willing to operate as a merchant. On the contrary, they would even have to pay a frightening management fee every month. This was also why the various powers laughed at the brilliant Sky Temple for purchasing the Crystal City of Secrets transportation firm. Because the brilliant Sky Temple had purchased the Eternal Realms midstage, the guild had ended up paying an upfront cost of over 5,000 eternal gold. Yet, just when everyone thought the brilliant Sky Temple would come to regret its decision, the brilliant Sky Temple suddenly used an item called the Heroic Mark to upgrade Crystal City's basic transportation firm to an advanced transportation firm. Then, as a result, many NPC nobles and even great nobles began to issue commissions via the firm. In no time at all, this Crystal City of Secrets transportation firm became a hot commodity for all players and powers. Most basic transportation firms only offered commissions made by ordinary NPCs, and only rarely would NPC nobles make a commission. Meanwhile, only when a commission came from an NPC noble could players obtain city reputation by completing it. Reputation was the basis for taking over NPC cities. However, daily quests that rewarded city reputation were relatively rare, and noble commissions were even rarer. However, so long as players managed to complete a noble commission, they could earn a large amount of city reputation and a chance of obtaining a secret treasure as a reward. Although the chances were low, noble commissions were still one of the more reliable ways for players to obtain secret treasures. As for advanced transportation firms, not only did they offer many more commissions from NPC nobles, but they would also offer commissions made by NPC nobles of other cities. Meanwhile, by completing these foreign nobles' commissions, players could obtain reputation points for the corresponding NPC cities. As a result, after the Crystal City's transportation firm got upgraded to the advanced rank, the various powers frantically fought over the commissions issued by the firm. This, in turn, allowed the brilliant Sky Temple to make a killing. During the Eternal Realms' later stages, the firm generated a daily income of several tens of thousands of eternal gold for the brilliant Sky Temple. Many experts had even chosen to join the brilliant Sky Temple so that they could take on commissions issued by great nobles. As for the Heroic Mark, it was one of the drops from the underground secret palace's level 155 floor master. It was a guaranteed drop on the floor master's first kill, and the brilliant Sky Temple just so happened to have secured it. Because of it, the guild decisively raised funds to purchase the Crystal City's transportation firm. Currently, access to the various city maps had only become available recently, so not many players have entered the Crystal City of Secrets yet. Because of this, the city's transportation firm should be very cheap. At most, it would cost 1 or 2,000 eternal gold. With his current wealth, he shouldn't have any trouble purchasing it. As long as he can get the Heroic Mark, the transportation firm would definitely become an endless treasure trove, its value far surpassing the city's various commercial properties. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng dared not waste any more time, promptly leaving Darkstar and logging into God's domain. Then, he contacted Desolate Fury's group of 3. I plan to do a quest in a secret land. Are you 3 interested in joining me? Shifeng asked. There is a chance for secret treasures to drop in that secret land. If any drop, we will distribute them by priority of classes. The underground palace emblem could open a teleportation gate that allowed up to 6 players to enter. Even with his current strength, it would be a challenge for him to solo the level 155 floor master. However, if he had the help of 3 other tier 5 experts, his chances of success would increase a little. Not to mention, he could use this opportunity to train Desolate Fury, La Roja, and Cross. After all, the trio possessed great potential. They were simply lacking legacies and opportunities. Secret treasures? Desolate Fury's eyes lit up when he heard this. That's great. The three of us have finally learned flowing space recently, and we've been itching to try it out. Wait for us, Brother Black Flame. We'll head over there now. All three of you have learned flowing space? Desolate Fury's words stunned Shifeng. Flowing space was a gold combat technique developed by the goddess of space. Even if one managed to grasp only the technique's first step, stepping space, one would still be considered a bona fide golden master and an apex existence among players of the same tier. MHM. All three of us have learned it. Desolate Fury nodded. Then, in a slightly embarrassed tone, he continued, La Roja and Cross managed to grasp the technique's essence less than half a day after using the legacy crystal. If it weren't for them practicing beside me continuously, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to grasp it. That's still very impressive. After all, that's a gold combat technique we are talking about. It's not something you can just learn on a whim, Shifeng said, feeling delighted. Although he had long known that the trio had great potential, he did not expect their talent and potential to be so high. With this, their party would have 4 golden masters. Not even Apex powers could afford to casually assemble such a party. Had such a party appeared during the encirclement in the Corrosion mountain range, the various powers present at the time would have been scared to death. Yet, just when everyone thought the Brilliant Sky Temple would come to regret its decision, the Brilliant Sky Temple suddenly used an item called the Heroic Mark to upgrade Crystal City's basic transportation firm to an advanced transportation firm. Then, as a result, many NPC nobles and even great nobles began to issue commissions via the firm. In no time at all, this Crystal City of Secrets transportation firm became a hot commodity for all players and powers. It can be hard to make great work when it's stolen from. Most basic transportation firms only offered commissions made by ordinary NPCs, and only rarely would NPC nobles make a commission. Meanwhile, only when a commission came from an NPC noble could players obtain city reputation by completing it. Reputation was the basis for taking over NPC cities. However, daily quests that rewarded city reputation were relatively rare, and noble commissions were even rarer. However, so long as players managed to complete a noble commission, they could earn a large amount of city reputation and a chance of obtaining a secret treasure as a reward. Although the chances were low, noble commissions were still one of the more reliable ways for players to obtain secret treasures. As for advanced transportation firms, not only did they offer many more commissions from NPC nobles, but they would also offer commissions made by NPC nobles of other cities. Meanwhile, by completing these foreign nobles' commissions, players could obtain reputation points for the corresponding NPC cities. As a result, after the Crystal City's transportation firm got upgraded to the advanced rank, the various powers frantically fought over the commissions issued by the firm. This, in turn, allowed the Brilliant Sky Temple to make a killing. During the Eternal Realm's later stages, the firm generated a daily income of several tens of thousands of eternal gold for the Brilliant Sky Temple. Many experts had even chosen to join the Brilliant Sky Temple so that they could take on commissions issued by great nobles. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3420, Chapter 494, A transportation firm that has an owner? Chapter 3420, Chapter 494, A transportation firm that has an owner? Chapter 494, A transportation firm that has an owner? Crystal City of Secrets, Underground Secret Palace. 4 beams of light descended on the plaza in front of the Underground Secret Palace, the lights fading to reveal Shifeng and his 3 party members. However, the sudden appearance of Shifeng's group did not attract the attention of the many players nearby, their behavior making it seem as if the sudden appearance of players on the plaza was commonplace. Dizziness assaulted the minds of the party of 4 when they first arrived in the city, and it took a moment for them to recover and get a clear look at the scene before them. So, this is the Crystal City of Secrets. Desolate Fury, La Roja, and Cross were in awe when they saw how many players there were walking on the streets around them. Although Pharos Town had quite a large player population, it was nothing compared to the Crystal City of Secrets. Not only did the Crystal City have a significantly larger player population, But its players also possessed astonishingly high levels and powerful backgrounds. At first glance, most of the players walking the Crystal City streets were above level 150. That was much higher than the three of them, who were still stuck at level 145. Moreover, going by the guild emblem these players wore, every one of them came from an upper-ranking hegemonic power, at the very least. Some of them even wore the guild emblems of pseudo-apex powers. In contrast, only a small portion of Pharos Town's player population came from upper-ranking hegemonic powers. As players originating from ordinary hegemonic powers, Desolate Fury, La Roja, and Cross couldn't help but feel out of place in the Crystal City of Secrets. Shifeng, on the other hand, didn't think much of the scene around him. During his previous life, the Crystal City of Secrets was one of the Eternal Realm's 7 great cities. Every one of these 7 cities could rival an entire realm on its own. Although access to the Crystal City had only become available to players recently, its potential was already clear for all to see. Hence, it was only natural for so many powers to gather here. Guild leader Black Flame, are we really going to stay here from now on? Cross couldn't help but look at Shifeng, feeling a bit nervous. After spending some time together in the Eternal Realm, Shifeng's strength became evident to the three of them. In their eyes, he was no different than a legendary existence. Hence, the three of them had already decided to follow Shifeng. They had even joined the Azura mercenary alliance that Shifeng mentioned. However, even though the three of them had successfully learned a gold combat technique, as individuals originating from hegemonic powers, they knew that upper-ranking hegemonic powers were not opponents to be trifled with. After all, a player's strength wasn't determined solely by their combat standards and combat techniques. There were also other factors, such as weapons, equipment, skills, spells, etc. In a city where so many upper-ranking hegemonic powers and pseudo-apex powers were concentrated, independent players like themselves would have difficulty surviving, even if they were highly skilled. After all, upper-ranking hegemonic powers and pseudo-apex powers were in command of many experts. How were solo or small groups of players supposed to compete against these powers in searching for crucial resources such as weapons and equipment, high-ranking quests, and high-tiered skills and spells? Before solo players could get their hands on any of these resources, the various powers would have long secured them with their vast manpower. I don't see any problem settling down here. For loosely grouped players like us, everywhere in the Eternal Realm is pretty much the same. We might as well choose a place where it's easy to obtain secret treasures. La Roja said, her eyes full of fighting spirit as she looked at the experts of powerful origins around her. Back in the Starlight Realm, although they were considered peerless paragons of kingdoms and empires, they never had any opportunities to compete with the experts of the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers and pseudo-apex powers. Now, though, not only would they get such an opportunity, but they could also compete with these experts on the same starting line. This had been La Roja's wish for many years. You're right. Cross nodded, his heart similarly brimming with fighting spirit. Now that we've learned a gold combat technique, I refuse to believe we can't make a name for ourselves here. Don't worry too much. Shifeng looked at the trio and smiled. Since I plan to develop in this city, I naturally have some confidence. After saying so, Shifeng led the trio to the Crystal City's City Hall. Crystal City of Secrets, City Hall. Logically, as the Eternal Realm's various city maps had just been unlocked, there shouldn't be many powers capable of affording the various NPC cities shops and lands. However, the Crystal City of Secret City Hall was unexpectedly crowded with players, and these players were frantically fighting over the city's lands and shops. I'm buying plot number 96. I'll take this small shop worth 42 gold. Damn it. Who bought the plot I had my eye on? There were more than 10 counters on the City Hall's first floor, and there was a long line in front of every counter. The sight was so grand that even Shifeng couldn't help but be a little surprised. Guild leader Black Flame, are you planning to buy a shop or a plot of land? Desolate Fury asked as he turned to look at Shifeng in surprise. Just by listening to the conversations in the first floor hall, Desolate Fury could already tell that the Crystal City's properties were incredibly expensive to purchase. Even a random property located in the city's outskirts was being sold for several dozen eternal gold, while properties located in the city center were sold for over 100 eternal gold. Even ordinary hegemonic powers wouldn't have the money to afford the Crystal City's properties, so Desolate Fury found it hard to imagine that Shifeng, by himself, could have so much money. No. Shaking his head, Shifeng said, I'm here to buy the transportation firm. The transportation firm? Desolate Fury was stunned for a moment. Even LaRoja and Cross couldn't help but think they had misheard Shifeng. Could transportation firms be bought? However, Shifeng did not bother clarifying the trio's confusion. Instead, he made his way to the third floor. The city hall had 3 floors. The first floor was prepared for ordinary customers interested in purchasing the city's shops and lands. The second floor was prepared for VIP customers, and one could purchase valuable shops and lands not available to ordinary customers. As for the third floor, it was a place where few players would set foot on. This was because the third floor specialized in selling the city's various industrial buildings. Greetings, dear customer. How may I be of service to you today? When Shifeng arrived on the third floor, he was led into a private room where a level 200, tier 5 elf greeted him with a beautiful smile. Then, the female elf continued. We specialize in selling large properties to wealthy customers such as yourself, and we will ensure your satisfaction. After saying so, the elven beauty took out a thin brochure. The lands and shops recorded in the brochure could not be found even on the second floor. It was a list specifically designed for players carrying a large amount of eternal gold. However, Shifeng didn't even look at the brochure, opting to ask directly, how much for the secret crystal transportation firm? Are you sure you want to buy the secret crystal transportation firm? The elven beauty looked at Shifeng with great surprise. Although the secret crystal transportation firm is only located in the suburbs and occupies a small area, purchasing it will still cost you 850 gold. In addition, you need to pay a weekly management fee of 300 gold. As the population of this city continues to grow, the management fee will also increase. Payment delays will not be tolerated, either. If you fail to make payment for even a week, we will repossess the transportation firm. Upon hearing the elven beauty's words, Desolate Fury, LaRoja, and Cross couldn't help but gasp. The price of 850 eternal gold was probably something even pseudo-apex powers couldn't afford right now. Not to mention, there was even a weekly management fee of 300 eternal gold. This was extortion at its finest. I'm sure, Shifeng said without hesitation. Here's 850 gold. Let's go through the procedures now. Upon seeing the coins Shifeng placed on the table, Desolate Fury and the others were utterly stupefied, and they couldn't help but look at Shifeng as if they were looking at a monster. 850 eternal gold. How could anyone have this much money right now? As soon as Shifeng completed the handover procedures and obtained the transportation firm's management rights, the players who were currently browsing for quests in the transportation firm were forcibly teleported out of the building. At the same time, the sound of a system notification entered their ears. System: the secret crystal transportation firm is now a player's private property. Players without permission are not allowed entry. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,